Greetings. We are at ResPack conference at the Lalit Hotel, and right now we are delighted to be with Stefan Barot, who is the president of Chemical Division BCML, which is Balrampur Chini Mills Limited. Thank you so much, Stefan, for doing this.
Abhay, thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you
Thanks
so
for having
much.
me.
So we know, of course, you are going to have a talk. You are going to talk at the ResPack conference, and so quick encapsulation of what you will present. What would the audience be expecting?
So I'm, of course, presenting what Balrampur Chini Mill is, what we do with PLA,
Yes.
which is a bio-based and industrially compostable material. But then we also look a bit more into biaxially oriented PLA and the structures you can do with the barrier properties you get from that. That's a quick encapsulation.
Yeah, that's nice. So since we're at the subject of ResPack, the ResPack stands for responsible packaging. So what does responsible packaging mean to you, and how important is responsible packaging?
I think packaging is overall one of the most overlooked part of our society.
Yeah.
If we cannot pack food,
Yeah.
we can talk about other materials,
Yeah.
but if we cannot pack food, we cannot preserve food, we cannot transport food, it actually will do a lot of damage to the society because people cannot eat healthy products.
Yeah.
And the question is, how can we do this with a minimal impact on the environment?
Yeah.
And that's where compostable materials come in, because you have a lot of packagings which by definition are very tricky to be mechanically recycled. We can take a sachet of masala which has oil inside or whatever. How do you want to recycle that? It's not possible.
Yeah.
So where does it go? It has to follow the biomass waste, and that means industrial compostability.
Yeah.
And that's in a nutshell what we're actually saying.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And with the dominant market of flexible plastic films, how does BCML's bio can be a breakthrough for Indian market?
So we are the first producer of PLA, polylactic acid, as the second biggest privately owned sugar mill. What we do is we take sugar, ferment it to lactic acid, take the water out, and polymerize it. So what you get is a bio-based and industrially compostable material. Now, when you do flexible, you have a couple of options. You can do biaxially oriented, then you get something flexible, or you can blow it together with other compostable materials. This simply allows you a different way of circularity, because that's in the end where we need to go as society. We need to become more circular. Right now we have a complete linear stream where we either litter, which is the worst, the landfill, which is second worst, or we incinerate. These are all linear streams because you don't get the material back. The circular streams are we either mechanically recycle, we organically recycle, which is composting, or we chemically recycle. And that's where we need to go, because then we can bring the materials back. And that's where compostable materials and what we bring simply allows the Indian producers and the Indian society to take a step in this direction.
And so usually bio-based materials tend to have performance issues, or the quality is not yet there, is what the industry says. So how does your newer biaxially oriented PLA, how does this perform in terms of strength and barrier properties?
I don't see a problem there. From a mechanical point of view, I don't see an issue.
Yes.
We have a very good sealability, for example. And we need to ask ourselves, what's the functionality the product needs? Because the functionality is first what we have to do, then it needs to be processable. And where we have a problem is the third aspect with the traditional products, that circularity. We already talked about that. Now, when you specifically talk about barrier property, this is a challenge. Because all the compostable materials are in essence polyesters, and polyesters degrade by bringing the water back into the polymer chain. So you have an inherent problem there. If you have no barrier properties, the degradation can't happen. Now you need to understand the chemistry behind because very little water is needed in most cases, and we can get barrier properties, and I think that's what we talk about later on in during the presentation. I'm not the only one who is talking about that.
Yeah.
By prolonging the trace of the water molecules or oxygen molecules, it's not just that, it's not just water, it's also oxygen. Or by having a barrier proper with metallization, for example, which still means the material is compostable.
Yes.
Yeah.
And talking about the location of the BCML plant, which is supposed to be in Uttar Pradesh.
Yeah.
So, how is the location factor working out for you? And the second part of that question is, how do you plan to manage everything in a single facility, right from, sourcing from sugar mills to the completed PLA?
It's not supposed to be, it will be in Kumbi, close to Sitapur, which is about 2.5 hours from Lucknow to the north. Actually, the location offers tremendous flexibility for us. Why? Yeah? So I said before, from sugar to lactic acid to lactite to PLA, the fact that we are located at the sugar facility has two big advantages.
Okay.
Number one, also we start up with white sugar. We can, in essence, use any fraction of the sugar mill for fermentation. The question is there from a fermentation point of view, do we purify before the fermentation or do we purify after the fermentation?
Okay.
And the question, the verdict on that, what makes most sense, is still out there.
Okay.
Now that's what we have to find out in the process, how we can optimize.
Of course.
The second very big advantage is we are completely independent of energy. We make our own energy.
Yes.
Which, when we look what's happening right now, the mess which somebody created in the Middle East, we don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
So from that, it gives us really an advantage.
Yeah, of course. And of course, some enormous numbers, 2,850 crore rupees investment with 80,000 ton annual capacity.
Yeah.
So how do you plan to scale this, with the FMCG brands particularly?
So we work with many FMG brands right now for different applications. We talk about dairy producers. We talk about other brands in food packaging, but we also talk with, when I say tobacco manufacturers, then I think it's pretty obvious who it is. But there are many different projects going on.
Yes.
And I'm convinced that this plant will be sold out very fast because that's the direction we need to go.
Yeah.
If we look at it, if India wants to differentiate itself, it cannot differentiate against what the others are doing, what China is doing, what Europe is doing. Yeah. India has one thing going for it, and that's an abundance of biomass. That's where India can actually differentiate in the future. Yeah,
of course. And since you spoke about different types of products, so which of these products, which everyday single-use plastic items are you planning to, completely replace using biopolymers or PLA?
We first want to make sure that what is already banned, that this ban is enforced, because it's not enforced right now. I mean, the India has a beautiful law on banning single-use plastics.
Yes.
There are 19 items which are banned, plus bags, but it's not fully enforced.
Yes.
If it would be fully enforced, our plant would already be full. We wouldn't have a problem there. Yeah. Actually, the problem would be that we still would need to import material then, which might not be beneficial for India in this sense. But we are first focusing on single-use plastics. So that's the first point. But then there are many more products where we need to ask ourselves, when is it meaningful that something is compostable or biodegradable?
Yes.
So, for example, the whole plastic items that end up in nature. How are we going to do that? Either you retrieve them, or they need to be biodegradable. Yeah. Because otherwise we end up with microplastics.
Yeah, of course.
Then we have many more items of conversion technologies are currently not in India. We talk about fibers, we talk about non-woven, so woven fibers, non-woven fibers, we talk about foams, where there are many more applications possible. Yeah. And we need to look at everyday items that just bring one, for example, air filters. What are we going to do with these dirty air filters? If you have PLA, you can do chemical recycling.
Yes.
So these are the thinking processes we need to start.
Yeah, and so when moving these bio-based films on the converting lines, what are the advantages regarding processes like metallization or lamination? So if a converter want to move to bio-based materials on his or her converting lines, so what are the typical advantages, or say how do they perform on the existing lines? Can they be retrofitted?
So again, we need to look at the specific line and product in the end. Otherwise, a comparison doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But if we go into biaxially oriented PLA, for example, then yes, that can be done.
Yes.
Polyplex did several trials. We cooperated with them, and we keep this very open as they are our partner in this. And they produced for several days commercially biaxially oriented PLA.
That's nice.
Which, if you look at it, you would not be able to say, is it PET or is it PLA? It behaves in the same way.
Yeah.
It has the same strength per weight. Yeah. So you cannot really distinguish it.
Of course.
Then, of course, the question is, do you metallize? Do you corona treat? This is all possible. Then it's the question, what do you do with the material? Are you using this as a shrink film? Are you using it for a laminate? And there we found out that PLA, for example, has excellent seal strength.
Okay. Yeah.
It's relatively easy to laminate on a paper. That works very well. So we did this already. So we are still exploring all the opportunities, and we are actually looking for partners who are willing to go in this direction, because we don't know all the requirements of the market.
Yeah.
We're still finding it out. So we are willing and happy to piece partners together to build the different applications.
Of course. And coming back to the point that you alluded to previously of India having single-use plastic ban. So what other such regulatory frameworks, such as plastic waste management rules, is BCML aligning itself with in Indian context?
I think we would be happy right now if the single-use plastic ban would be fully enforced. If the government would find the tools and take up the energy to really making sure this is happening.
Yes.
And I think after that, then we need to look into the single applications and say, where are compostable materials better than mechanical recycling? And this is on a case-to-case basis. It might even be on a region-by-region basis.
Yeah.
Because you might have places where you have enough water to wash, in a different place you don't have enough water to wash. So how are you judging this? This is then a question of the local circumstances. That's how we push right now in this direction.
And so now a couple of questions which I have picked up from the conference that happened for a day and a half. There's this saying in the industry which goes as, all compostable materials are biodegradable, but not all biodegradable materials are compostable. So, and there's often these two terms, compostability and biodegradability, they are used interchangeably. So how do we distinct this, or what are your thoughts on this?
So, the saying is correct. I mean, compostability is a subset of biodegradation. But everything biodegrades. Even this biodegrades, because this is usually PVC. Just takes a couple of 100 years. So give me an environment, then we can make a standard. Then we can say, is something soil degradable? Is it biodegradable in the sea? Then we can make this standard. And what the challenge there is, when we look again at the three musts, so something must perform, it must be converted, and it must be circular in the future. Can we make something which is home compostable? Yes, we can. However, you severely impact the performance. Because in India, the performance environment and the degradation environment is the same. If I sell something out in a stall or in a shop which is barely ventilated and not cooled,
Yeah.
I have 35, 40 degrees.
Yeah.
This is a higher temperature than you have with home composting. So are we not doing ourselves a disservice there of pushing these different standards, not even thinking that when we look into home composting, for example, that we have completely different conditions in South India than we have in North India?
Yes.
How should that work?
Of course.
And I think this is the overall question. If we think about the three, so it must perform, it must be convertible, and must be circular. We need to keep this in mind. The performance is number one, because if something is not performing, why do we need it in the first place?
Of course. And there's this also cost that comes into the picture. So, yesterday I was talking to Mr. Sundar Balakrishnan of Nature Tech. So he mentioned the triangle where there's performance, like you said, there's performance, there's cost, and then there's the sustainable quotient. So if it fits in the triangle, then so how does the cost behave in this? Because we see, so India is said to be a price sensitive market.
It's a very price sensitive market.
Yeah.
But when you move the law and people adhere to the law, you basically shift the baseline. Now then the question is, if something must be compostable, what is the cheapest option? So you could use, instead of a plastic plate, a paper plate, but then you need to coat it with something. Is that then also compostable? Because if it's not compostable, how can you call the whole thing compostable? And I think that's what we have to understand. Where does the government start to move the goalposts in a direction of circularity? Because the current plastics is not circular. Even if we try to do mechanical recycling, which we have to do, and I think we come to that later, there will be certain items which will not work with mechanical recycling. So how do you move the goalposts there? And if you have the same arm's length, I don't have a problem.
Of course.
Compostable materials will come.
And so what infrastructural changes do you think we should have in terms of, to have chemical recycling at a better option, or to do it efficiently, I would say?
So in the end, we need to start with mechanical recycling, not because mechanical recycling will ultimately work everywhere, but we need to start there because we need to set up the whole sorting, collection and sorting streams. Because if you don't have a pure material, how do you want to make something valuable out of it?
Of course.
Then we need to look into what are we really talking about? Because most people, when they talk now about recycling, they talk about downcycling. Upcycling doesn't work for me because I would use a better material from the start if I could do that. So what do we have really like for like recycling? So the first infrastructure we need to do is really the mechanical recycling, because then we can separate the streams. Then we need to look, how do we separate the biomass waste at source? Because if we don't do that, the whole mechanical recycling becomes difficult. Paper is soiled with food. What you're going to do with paper which is soiled with food? Basically, you cannot do anything. What you're going to do with plastic which is soiled with food? You have to wash it additionally with soap, even if it wasn't soiled in the first place. So the separation of food waste and the rest needs to happen at home in the end. And I was coming from Germany, where they always told me you cannot teach the people how to do that. And I always had to say, if I can teach an Italian, because in Italy this is working, it will work in Germany, it will also work in India. It will be a question of education and time. Because our grandparents, honestly, they did this already. We just stopped doing it because it was more convenient to chuck everything away in the first place. And then I think the second part which needs to happen is, where can we close the loop? So if I go to a company selling bottles, how can we get these bottles back? Regardless of what the material is. We can make them from PLA, we can make them from PET. How can we recycle them? In an efficient and safe way. It must be safe in the end for the consumer.
Of course. And one final thing before we conclude this is, how, so how is the market or how is the optimism for bioplastics or bio-based materials look like? Is the future outlook looking good, and are there any more such bio-yugs to be formed from other bio-based material companies?
I think the future looks very bright. Yeah, I think everybody's waiting right now for our success.
Yes.
Yeah. So once we are successful, I can guarantee you many more companies will come, which is good because it pushes the momentum. As Balrampur Chini Mill, we try to stay one step ahead and bring a larger plant then on, because in the end, cost is a question of economy of scale.
For sure, yeah.
And if we can scale up, we can bring the costs down, and then it becomes self-perpetuating, and that's where we need to go in the end.
Yeah, and how do you think the brands would, or the emerging brands or the upcoming brands would look at bio-based solutions for? Is there a dialogue which needs to be, is there an awareness that needs to be created, or are they already aware about this?
I think the large international brands, they're already aware of it. They're working with it. The challenge for large brands is that they need to protect their brand when you look at the large brands. So they will shift, but slowly. The challenge right now is that NGOs, one time they say plastic is bad, the next time they will say paper is bad because you have to cut all the trees down.
Yeah.
What brand owners in the end want is a certainty that if they now invest into a certain solution and brand image, that they don't have to change it in a couple of months or in the near future. Otherwise, they have a challenge. It backfires. And then we have, of course, a lot of smaller brands where we actually get a very good response because they want to differentiate themselves. And coming with a more sustainable packaging solution is a great opportunity to differentiate themselves.
So what do you think is driving this? Is it the consumer demand for eco-friendly products, or is it the regulations, or is it the mixture of both?
I think it's never one single thing. We see, and I have been at the food conference in 2024 in November here in Mumbai, and I see a sharp divide of the people below 30 and above 30.
Okay.
Yeah? So you see young people, they really start to care about the environment. They come up and say, what can we do to improve our packaging? Older people think it's just the bottom line which counts. Yeah. So you will have a mix of all. I also think as industry we need to sit together in the end, and we are working on ICPA, the Indian Compostable or Circular Polymer Association.
That's nice.
To actually talk it out, because you might have a different opinion than I have, and I have. So we need to have a scientifically based discussion on what makes sense and why. And if the industry is coming up with this sentiment towards the government, say, look, scientifically that's what we propose, it will be much easier to drive the legislation in the right direction.
Yeah, of course. So one final question, can you talk a bit more about the ICPA and how do we promote this polymer science in the industry? How do we encourage, how do we create more awareness about the polymer science in the industry?
Yeah, I think in the end, unfortunately, it's difficult to teach science. People don't find it sexy. I find it very interesting because we need to ensure we understand, for example, how is degradation happening? How is biodegradation or degradation happening of a normal material? What is the trigger in this process? It first deteriorates, then it fragments, then the bioassimilation starts, and in the end, it mineralizes. The steps are always the same.
Yeah.
And you have this either chemically driven, abiotic, or biologically driven, biotic, but when is which process taking over? And that is material specific, for example.
Yeah.
So we need to talk about that.
Yes.
Because if you try to make something enzymatically degradable, will this work in reality or will it not work in reality? And these are scientific questions which we need to discuss. And I think we need more scientists in the forums in the end to look at these questions.
Yes.
When we talk about biodegradation. We can also talk about barrier properties.
Of course.
Yeah. We can look at environmental footprint. And there will people naturally push their own interest, which is good. Then we need to see if you push in this direction, I push in the other direction, we probably come up with a point which we say both, yeah, this looks about right from a scientific point of view.
Yeah, of course. So that's a good way, that's a good note to end this conversation on. So it's a collaborative effort, a good point for the industry to meet, a center point for the industry to meet. So
I mean, when we have the same vision, so the ICPA vision is, if I may, that by 2047, 50% of the carbon in the polymers is bio-based. All the circular options, which I mentioned earlier before, composting, mechanical and chemical recycling exist. And the circularity is done with the least impact for humans and the environment. As long as you can subscribe to that,
of course,
we will end up at a good solution. I'm convinced about that.
That's great. I would love to know more about ICPA. Maybe in the future conversations, we will deep dive into the ICPA. What is ICPA doing, and how is it fostering growth?
Happy to do that. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So before we end this conversation, this is the new What Packaging magazine. It's repackaged, redesigned and relaunched here at the ResPack conference.
Thank you very much.
So this is
I think we need to put it like this. Huh? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks
it was
a lot.
Pleasure talking.
Thank you.